There's a commercial going on in the background.
Oh, that's
Oh,
my
is it?
TV. Let me
Oh.
turn. Let me turn that down. Thank you for saying.
Well, we're trying to sell
I'm,
ads now, so you know.
I'm,
Yeah, they didn't pay us yet. You know, when the check clears.
I'm sitting here watching Golden Girls. It was on the commercial.
Oh man. All right. 1 2 1 2. Hello, what's going on, people? What is happening? This is Marcus Kwame, aka Young Manafort, sitting in the cockpit, coat made of ostrich. You know, that's a new thing I'm working with, man.
What is happening?
Come on, man. I'm trying to channel that
That's your
Manafort confidence with the ostrich coat.
Okay, that's right.
that's your
That's right.
second
He
gig.
does have an ostrich
Second
coat.
gig. Right
Yeah. That's gonna be popping in the streets this summer. I'm telling you. Anyway, man, we can get into ostrich coats later. I got a whole segment lined up for it, but before we get to that, we got a very, very special guest returning to the show. And before we get to that, I'm gonna kick it off with the Black Comics Chat crew. First up, we got the international lady of mystery, the Carmen San Diego of the crew, always fresh off her award tour. We got Grace.
hello, and about to get on an award tour. So we the timing was just perfect. Just key
Okay.
spot on right there.
Where you
But
going?
yes, I'm headed up to Martha's Vineyard for the week, going to a film festival.
Oh,
So
snap.
Nice. Cool.
yeah. So, but it's good to be on with the crew tonight and chat it up and talk about this awesome Kickstarter. And let's just get on into it.
Okay, cool. And next up, man, we got the Red Lion of the crew, the undercover Sith Lord himself. We got Tony in the house.
What up, peeps? What's going on? I'm kind of excited though because I just finished Voltron, so I'm just like still soaking that in. And I know the next season is starting in like a week or so I'm good.
I'm a couple seasons behind, but I've definitely been consuming some Voltron
Dude, it
too.
got so good. It got so good.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. But we are here today. The guest of the hour is returning to the show for, I want to say, the third time. We got Black Comics Chat favorite Joamette Gill in the house to speak all about her brand new Kickstarter campaign. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing pretty good. All things considered, running a Kickstarter is really hard, but it's going really well, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely off to a strong start. I mean, that's it's looking promising, but I know it's stress. I know for us from the audience, it looks like it's all fun and games, but
It's all just comics and video games for y'all.
oh man. Nah, but yeah. So, all right, before we really dive in headfirst into the anthology, just tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you since the last time we spoke to you, and your work. How are you?
2018 has been super, super busy. There was editing the anthology and getting the Kickstarter ready, and also just a bunch of lettering work for Lion Forge, which has been really nice.
Cool.
And other things, I'm sure, because that can't be all I did to pay my rent. But it was just a blur. Just a blur of freelance work and other stuff. And yeah, just living that comics life, that full-time comics life.
Nice. Well, I mean, that's the dream for a lot of us. So how was which Lion Forge books did you work on?
Right now I'm lettering Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Xu. It's a young adult fantasy comic about two Chinese American I don't want to say kids. I think they're like college age, but one of them is a deaf witch girl who lives with her two gay witch bookstore owning grandmas and in New England, and it's really cute. And her significant other, who she's sort of falling in love with through the book, is another Chinese American kid. They're non-binary and they're a werewolf, and it's a sort of slice of life magical mystery where it's lots of family, lots of culture, lots of just like really soothing people taking care of each other with like a background mystery behind why people are trying to capture the werewolf character, because the werewolf character has a secret power that no one understands yet.
As you were describing it, I'm like, it definitely hit on just a lot of topics that are, that you've dealt with like quite a bit. So I think it sounds like it's like the perfect project for you.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. It started out as a webcomic before it was picked up by Lionforge, though it didn't get too far in before they got a deal, which, is really great. So it was available for free, then it wasn't available for free. Right. But I think it's going to be available for free again. Like, I think Lionforge, a part of the deal is that once it's all done, they're going to be allowed to release it as a periodic sort of webcomic thing, while Lionforge also puts it out as a paperback.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Nice.
It just sounds exciting.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I was a fan of it before. I liked it before it was cool,
Trendsetter, definitely a trendsetter.
Cool. So you mentioned that another thing you've been very busy with, obviously, is editing the anthology. For anyone who is not familiar, can you just tell us what the anthology is about?
Absolutely. The anthology is called Heartwood, Non-Binary Tales of Sylvan Fantasy, and it is a 250 plus page collection of short comics, all by creators who identify as non-binary. And for any listeners who aren't sure what that means, it means that the person does not identify strictly as a woman nor as a man. There are some non-binary identities that sort of relate to manhood and womanhood, or can be both at the same time, or like on a spectrum, but it's sort of it's always more fluid as a form of gender. And a lot of non-binary people just very, very specifically identify as neither, as like a third thing or a fourth thing, or just like a completely other thing. And all of the characters in all the stories are also well, not all the characters. Every story has a non-binary protagonist, and other people are allowed to be in it too. And all of the stories follow a theme of Sylvan fantasy, which is fantasy stories that center around like the forest as a location. In some of those stories, it's about sort of having some sort of metaphorical journey when you travel through the forest, or the forest itself might be a sentient character, or it's more Hansel and Gretel style, like you wandered into the woods and you found yourself in a situation, and it sort of has like an allegorical quality to it as you make your way out of it.
Yeah, as I was looking at the Kickstarter page, that theme of the forest and all of the the meanings and themes within, like that really was interesting to me. Can you speak a little bit about that, about how you came to that as the kind of center for this anthology?
Oh, definitely. I've always been really just intrigued by the sort of place that forests occupy in fairy tales and folklore. It very much represents liminality, which is sort of, that means in-betweenness, or like a sort of transitionary state between one place or another, or between one way of being and another. Because in so many old stories, again, Hansel and Gretel being another example, and also tales of Baba Yaga, etc., you go from the place where you sort of know what's going on. You're kind of stagnant in a way. If you're in the town, you're in the city, you're in your village, it's what you know. It's where you've grown up. It's where you know your place. And the forest is the other when it comes to places. It's the outside. It's a place where there's no light, where you're going to go into the unknown, and you don't know what you're going to find there. And a lot of that symbolism has come from the fact that, there were times when we would go in the forest and just get killed by something because
but you didn't necessarily come back out.
Yeah, you didn't necessarily come back out when you go into the forest. And a lot of old stories about forests are geared towards just protecting the community. Like, oh, you know, so-and-so's kids went in and they got eaten by Sasquatch, so you better stay out of the woods. Or for me growing up, it was, you know, don't go out at night, don't go into the backyard or the trees because a coco is going to get you. And to this day, I don't know what the coco is. It's just sort of a Caribbean boogeyman. But
that's real, though. That's real.
For real.
Yeah. But the coco definitely lives outside and where the trees are and in the dark. And then there's also just stories where you go into the forest and you have to face certain trials. There are certain tests you have to go through. And at the end of those, you sort of find out something about yourself that you didn't know because you entered a space that is outside your comfort zone. And I really like that. I really like pairing that idea with an anthology that's also so based on gender, and specifically gender that feels like it's the least understood by anyone. And it's so misunderstood that sometimes we ourselves who identify as non-binary, it's sort of a journey for us to even understand ourselves, to understand what our own gender is. And I guess not to put too fine a point on it, but it's kind of like going into the woods and feeling a little lost about what this means about you and who you are and why you are, etc. And because I relate to it that way, I figured, you know, I think a lot of other non-binary people will find the forest theme relatable, and ta-da, they did. Lots of them did.
So let's talk about that, because I mean, one thing, one of the reasons I love anthologies in general is there's the obvious reasons, right? Where, you know, they're just a collection, a well-curated collection of, you know, stories that kind of coalesce around a certain theme, but also like just go in various directions with talented people behind them. But I think like books like your previous anthologies and Puerto Rico Strong are significant in the sense that they focus on groups of people that in the popular narrative of comics that a lot of like fanboys like to say, you know, they like to say like, oh, well, maybe there just aren't, you know, that many creators of X group out there. You know what I mean? And then, you know, books like yours and like Puerto Rico Strong, they like prove like, no, there are people out there. There's tons of people out there, you know, who are talented from all these various groups. Can you like talk about that specifically in this instance with non-binary creators and, you know, visibility or lack thereof in the comics industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you bring up visibility in the comics industry specifically, because with non-binary people, it's the visibility issue. I mean, for any group of people you name, if you say like, oh, there's so few in X industry, you'll probably find that it's because there's so few in every industry, with like few exceptions. Like comics is sort of, it's not a place where people make a lot of money in general, but it is sort of a career that's kind of viewed in a way as luxurious, in the sense that, you know, you're not lifting something heavy, you're not like a doctor, you're not like there's almost a frivolity that people attach to being an artist. Like, oh, you just sit at a table and you draw all day, etc. But like, it's a career that shuts out so many people. It shuts out basically, like, it shuts out anyone who isn't a white man, and to a lesser extent or a greater extent, you know, white women are able to be in the industry as well, although they also face sexism, etc. But like, you just go down this chain and it's like, okay, so there are fewer white women in the industry, and then there are fewer women of color in general in the industry, and, you know, there are even fewer Black women in the industry, and then like there are fewer Black women with disabilities, and I feel like I've gotten away from my point, but when you sort of wanted me to talk about specifically like representing non-binary people and their absence in comics and stuff like that, it got me thinking about the fact that non-binary people are extremely invisible in like every community. And there are, let's see, over half of the contributors in Heartwood, Non-Binary Tales of Sylvan Fantasy, are people of color as well.
Mm.
And one thing that I've noticed in the past is there'll be like an anthology or like a collection or something that's like, okay, we're going to focus around this identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the identity isn't race specifically,
right,
then they're like, it's not that there aren't ever any people of color in it, but it definitely feels like it becomes less of a priority. Like either you say, okay, this is for POC only, and then you make sure you get all your, POC across the board into the collection, or you say, for example, this is for trans people, right? And then you have like 3 people of color out of like 20 contributors. And it's sort of this phenomenon where like people of color don't often get I feel like they're sort of put in the back if someone's already doing a different like good thing that they can pat themselves on the back for. It's like, oh well, we're representing queer people, so we're already being diverse, congratulations everyone. And it's like, well, okay. But queerness encompasses everyone,
right.
like it's a I don't have a name for this phenomenon. Probably someone way smarter and with like a PhD has a name for it, but it's the phenomenon where white people seem to have a really easy time caring about any form of oppression that can affect a white person.
Right.
Oh, like white privilege, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, white privilege. That word.
Well, and it's also the default, right? Like the idea of them being the default.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like just like I thought about that with the recent Scarlett Johansson thing where she was like,
Right.
I'm gonna play a trans man in this thing, right? And
right.
The internet yelled. Yeah, and the internet yelled at her, and she wrote a little apology, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, y'all help me see the error of my ways. I definitely won't play this character." And I'm like, why was that so hard to get when we were yelling at you about being Asian?
I remember the apology not being that great in and of itself,
Yeah.
I recently went on a rant about how I feel nuance is dead. You know what I mean? It's just you get into this situation where it's like common sense is dead. Yeah. Critical thinking is dead.
Critical thinking.
It's one of those things where, and what got me upset was this whole issue in which the voice actor for Miles Morales basically said that he was half Mexican.
Right.
And as if it's no big deal, but for those who know better, know it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's this whole point of nuance. Like you can't put everyone in one little bottle and just be like, oh well, that's the default identity, Hispanic identity, or the default sexual identity. It's dumb, and when it happens it's upsetting, and it's just like, where's the nuance? And why don't we understand this? Right.
And like, I guess going back on target to the comics part, it I guess it dawned on me at some point that I am surrounded by non-binary people just constantly on social media and off of social media. Like 9 out of 10 of my closest friends are non-binary. And it's not like I went on an app, like only put non-binary people in my life, let's find them. Like it just sort of happened that way, in the way that like people who have similar experiences or similar like journeys will gravitate towards each other because they can relate to each other in that way. Mm-hmm. But I realized at the same time that like I'd never really heard of something that was just for non-binary people. Like I hadn't heard of an anthology that was just non-binary people. I hadn't heard of like even like a Facebook group that was just non-binary people. Like I hadn't heard of like a podcast that was like, oh yeah, it's a non-binary stuff. That's what we're going to talk about. Like it's always it's always women and non-binary people, or all transgender people. And that's great. Those spaces are invaluable. But there's just sort of like this interesting weirdness around specificity for non-binary people, because it's a very different, it's its own distinct thing that, you know, there should be spaces for and there should be conversations about, and shouldn't be lumped in with other things out of not only respect for non-binary people, but also respect for the people they're being lumped in with, because they're not the same. So like, yeah, this anthology, I've Googled the heck out of it. So I always say, I'm pretty sure, I am pretty sure Heartwood is the first and only all non-binary anthology, period. And it's something that I think when I tell people, if they're non-binary, they go, oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm so moved. I'm so relieved that there's something out there that is specifically for me. Someone saw me and said, no, yeah, you. No, not all of you, you. And when I tell it to other people who aren't non-binary, they just kind of get this little look on their face where they're thinking about it, and they're like, you know what? You're right. I can't think of anything else. And in this way where it's clear, like, they never thought to think about it. Like, it just wasn't even on the priority bucket. It wasn't like they didn't care. Like, not in a bad way, like they're trying to do something wrong or mean or anything. It's just, it's such an invisible community, if that makes sense. Even though it affects, like it's inside every other community. Like, there are non-binary white people, there are non-binary Latinx people, there are non-binary Black people, there are non-binary Asian people, and like all of whom are in the anthology, so they're out there. So yeah, as far as like dudes in comics not wanting to see that stuff, they're not even my audience. Like, I don't think about them.
Right. Well, yeah, you know, and I mean, I think that's super important, and I think that was my initial point, is that like anthologies like this, and all of your anthologies, to be honest, like yeah, forget what those dudes think, but they disprove that lie that we hear over and over again, that basically the reason why we only see a very monochromatic group of people making comics is because there just aren't that many other people out there. You know what I mean? Like you're shining a light on all these creators that too often go unseen, you know? So I think that these anthologies are important in that sense.
I think so too.
Yeah, obviously. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's why I do them. And thank you so much. I think, like, yeah, when I started rambling earlier, I think the point I was trying to get at was that yeah, they think we don't exist, and that there aren't enough of us who want to do it because they don't hire us. Like, we're not considered for anything. And I mean, and there are creators out there who like have gotten their foot in the door in like Marvel and DC and stuff, and like you'll occasionally see the truth slip out in a tweet or in like a message board or whatever, where someone's like, no, but for real, every time I've tried to like use my leverage to get like someone from like an underprivileged group like in as the letterer or in as the colorist or in as something to try and get the foot in the door, my editor will straight up ask me things like, oh, are they easy to work with?
Oh my God.
Like coded, exactly. What does that mean, Grace? It's like the most coded shit ever. And it happens, and that's basically how this industry runs. It's either you're small time and you're doing it yourself, and you're just trying to stay afloat and get people out there and yourself out there as best you can, or you know, it's big fish trying to like just make their money and make as few waves as possible, and they consider like someone who might call out the other bullshit happening there as making a wave or not making it run smoothly. They're like, this is a smooth ship. If we bring someone in who's like gonna have an HR complaint or whatever, looking at DC, against our precious editor or whatever, then, you know, that's too much trouble. So we're just going to keep it to people that we know are like us. They get it, aka white and privileged, and they'll be like, whatever, we'll let everything slide. And yeah, they just want to work with people who will let everything slide, essentially.
So along those lines, right? Like, obviously Marvel and DC are, you know, yes, cracking their glass ceilings is a whole big huge thing in and of itself. But even like as far as like other indie publishers or whatever, have you seen like, well, I don't know, have you seen people like that were represented in your anthologies? Like, what are some success stories that you've seen, you know, with people moving forward and moving up?
I've seen a lot of people definitely get more work, though I would hesitate to associate that with.
Well, yeah, I'm not asking you to dust off your shoulders. I'm just saying, but you know, like I do think that you know, but you can take a little credit though.
And I don't think I deserve any. But it's complicated because there are people who have gone on to get like more high profile jobs and stuff. But I kind of feel weird about like sort of painting their experience as a success story and going on to greater things, or like putting that word in their mouth, because I know that some of them have ended up at indie companies or doing work for indie companies that are actually full of shit and haven't been treating them very well. So I'm like,
no, that's the truth. That's fact.
Yeah, I mean, if we've all just been swimming in the Twitter, the Twitter truth for the past like month and a half, it's a lot. There's a lot going on out there where it's like you think someone's getting like a shot, and sure, they're making great work, and we all get to enjoy it, and it's beautiful, and there's a sort of fulfillment in getting to do what you love and getting some sort of paycheck and paying your rent, and it's what we're all out here trying to do. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say like, oh well, this person went on to work for whatever, and that's great, because then I don't want to make that company sound good.
But that's very fair. That's very fair. I think I was coming at it from the perspective that, you know, it's just, you know, cracking the wall and the ceiling is tough, period. So yeah, I mean, it might not necessarily be a success story in terms of like, you know, people making it rain, but you know, I just am looking for, I guess, a positive in all of this underrepresented darkness.
Oh no, Marcus, everything sucks. Everything sucks and we all die. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was about to agree with you. My bad.
You're right. You're right.
Okay, so people who have gone on to make things that are worth reading. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, let's put it that.
Let's see. There's Naomi Franquise, who has forever been amazing and incredible. She was on the first Power and Magic, and she ended up working with the writer or the screenplay writer of 10 Things I Hate About You on a comic series at Boom, which looks really cute. And the let's see, the cover artist for Power and Magic, Ash Samuels, who just completely killed it when she drew that cover. She's been getting invited as like a special guest to a bunch of stuff for like people having discovered her through the Power and Magic cover, and getting more commissions as far as I can tell, so that's exciting. Wendy Xu was part of the Immortal Souls project. She was initially going to be in the book, but because of scheduling conflict, she ended up doing the stretch goal comic for it. And she's the one who's behind Mooncakes at Lion Forge right now. And she's got a whole bunch of other stuff cooking that I can't say for her, but I'm very happy for her right now. Yeah, everyone's doing cool stuff. Nivedita Secar was in Power and Magic Volume 1, and she has been just like, she was more of an illustrator and an animator before that, and while she still primarily does that, I've been seeing much more comics work from her, especially getting shared on social media, and her following has been growing a lot, so I'm super happy about that. She has an incredible style. I'm not sure if y'all remember it off the top of your heads, but she's the one that did the Your Heart is an Apple comic. Yeah. Yeah, she's stellar, and I kind of just want her to do a graphic novel, and I'll just put that vibe into the universe right now. That'll happen for her.
That's really dope. So so as far as Heartwood is concerned, like, tell us about, like, without giving away too much, obviously, you know, tell us a little bit about some of the creators that are involved.
Sure thing. I'm going to talk about them as they come to mind, because there's 27, and that scrambles my brain every day. We've got Annabelle H on board. She's Sparkly Fawn. I'm sorry, they are Sparkly Fawn on Twitter, and they are a brilliant illustrator. They're still in school, but everything they do is like absolutely amazing, and you can see all of their illustrations on sparklyfawn.tumblr.com. They are also the creator of the Drawing While Black hashtag that exploded, I think at the end of last year. And they're just really incredible. Let's see, there's also Corey Walters, who has done a lot of comics work, though I hadn't heard of them before this project, which was disappointing and also great, because I love learning about new people through doing calls for submissions. And they're Corey's story is probably the shortest in the book, but it's like, it speaks to me on a really like primal level. It's all about like just humankind's relationship to the forest. And like, even though that's so close to the overall theme of the anthology, it's really the story that like cuts into that very directly and concisely in a way that sort of evokes our physical relationship to the forest, and how we're all sort of one organism, and both consuming and being consumed by the land. And it just hits me really hard. I love that one. Like, I'm like getting emotional describing it. Let's see, there's also Ashanti Fortson, who is an absolutely magnificent Afro-Mexican creator. They do a webcomic called Galanthus, which is a sort of a space fantasy epic. And their story for Heartwood is about it's about a mother and child who both are botanists by trade, and they are on an expedition in a Peruvian cloud forest looking for a very rare flower. When they get they sort of get off track because they have a very, very bad relationship with each other, and they end up getting put through like a series of trials that they have to cooperate on by some magical flower creatures that are like, not in our forest. You're gonna learn to get along with each other as a family. And it's a really sweet story. Gosh, who else? Who all else? Let's see, Rhiannon Rasmussen and Chan Chow are working together. They're a magnificent pair. Rhiannon is one of the best writers I've ever encountered in my entire life, and I really can't wait for people to read their story and for them to just get more stories out there. And their story is about a pair of divers who are communicated with by a sea goddess, and it takes place in a kelp forest instead of, your standard on dry land normal forest, which I thought made it very unique. And Chan Chow is such a brilliant, absolutely brilliant illustrator that everyone should follow on Twitter. I mean, everyone should just go to the Kickstarter page and click all the links and follow everyone. But yeah, they take my breath away every time I see something new from them. Dang, dang, dang. Okay, Raven Ravy Ray White, who is a joy to work with. Their attitude is always so cheerful and so like excited to be working. I really loved editing them. Their story is about a kid named Andile. I'm just making all these like thinking noises, like and Andile is at school one day and they feel a pain in their chest, and their mother has to come and take them to a hospital. But before they make it there, they're lured into the woods by a mysterious creature that seems to just, like, except for its masked face, be made entirely of darkness and stars. And I'm not going to say anything more about that because I don't want to ruin that one. It is incredible. But yeah, I could go on and on about all of these, but that's some of them.
Wow. And you said there are 27 creators involved?
I think 27 or 29, including myself and my partner, who's working with me on my story, because I did not have time to draw it myself this time around.
Well, you have a few things to do, so I think we understand.
Yeah, a few things.
Cool. So, I mean, obviously the editing process and the editing grind is real, but just for, I guess, for listeners who aren't familiar and who do think it's all fun and games, like what is it like? What's the process of putting together an anthology like?
Well, for this time it was a little different. The things that were the same were crafting, a call for submissions that answers as many questions as possible before people feel the need to ask them. Just not only so people know what they're getting into and whether or not, this is worth their time and like which chunk of time you're asking for from them. So like putting the schedule on there, I think is very important too, because people have other shit to do and they need to know if they're going to be able to meet the deadlines. But just also so that like it makes the process more smooth, because there's going to be a ton of questions anyway. There's always a ton of questions. So it's putting out a detailed call for submissions, answering questions as they come along. And then once the submissions roll in, this time we had close to 200 submissions. And those figuring out which ones are solid in terms of having a beginning, middle, and end that is unique from all the others and is compelling and, has something unique about it in relation to everything else, narrowing it down to those and then narrowing it down even further to like which ones you like the most of the ones that are perfectly good pitches, and then taking the ones you like the most and getting rid of some of those too, because you can't, because there's just too many. There's just too much good stuff. And from there, it's a matter of just keeping step with everyone as they go, as people write their script, being there at the end of that process to look over scripts, make sure everything's spelled right, first of all, make sure sentences make sense, make sure like you didn't spell this character's name this way on this page and then change their name on the second page. And like, does this story flow? Am I compelled? Should you take out this scene because it slows it down, or like maybe add a little bit here to like make it more impactful or emotional, etc. And then just putting that much thought into what everyone's trying to do and like what feedback would be the most helpful at every step of it, from the writing to the thumbnails, the pencils, inks, shading, letters, etc. What was different this time was that it's the first time that I invited people specifically to have a spot in the book. In the previous two anthologies, it was a completely open call. There was no one who was guaranteed a spot in the book, but for Heartwood, about half the book was people who I reached out to personally and said, hey, I'm not asking you to pitch to something. I'm asking you if you just want to be in it. Yes or no style, because I've looked at your portfolio and it's extremely strong and I know what I'm going to get out of it. And that added a few more steps to the process, in that I was inviting folks, but I didn't want to invite a bunch of folks and then be like, write whatever you want, and then end up accidentally with like 6 people writing the same story because they have similar taste or something, or like the stars aligned. So there was a bit of like a different pitching process for them where they gave 2 to 3 ideas, not even fully fleshed out with like a beginning, middle, and end, just like 3 ideas. And then I would look over all the invited people's ideas and be like, okay, well, you both have a third choice, or you both have a choice that's like kind of the same as each other, but like this person put it as their first choice and then the other person put it as their third choice. So the person who liked that concept more, I'll say they'll do it, and then for this other person I'll be like, go with a different idea that you had, etc. But yeah, so it's just kind of like a little process inside of a bigger process this time.
Wow. So, and I know that when I looked this morning, I believe you were at like over 40% funded.
Yes, we are at 46% funded now, I want to say.
Okay. So you definitely hit the ground running, because I mean, you just launched yesterday, right?
We launched Wednesday at 4, which was, Wednesday was harrowing because my video producer, we had agreed on a time a few hours ahead to let the video uploaded, and it's usually how we've done it in the past. And ended up in the hall that morning with I thought poison. Okay, now she was able to the same day, but it was sort of like big lunchtime, and I didn't know why. I just wondered, oh no, did she fall asleep? But hero and just on Twitter, she's Lumiere _ makes a it for my super successful kicker, and like I don't know why anyone is paying anybody else to make their videos, honestly, if they're paying anyone else, because she works with a lot of people.
Joe, before you go on, we lost you for a minute. At least I did on my end. I couldn't hear you for a minute. So can you just just repeat her name and shout her out again? Oh yeah, her name is Lucia Retamales, and she is at Lumiere _ Reta RETA on Twitter. She is fantastic, brilliant animator, brilliant video producer, and God bless her. She's in the hospital, and she starts texting people who can let me know that she's in the hospital and that her boyfriend is going home to upload the video and send it to me. And all I can think in my brain is, who cares about my Kickstarter? You're in the hospital.
That's hardcore, though. That's hardcore.
Yeah.
It is super hard.
That's dedication right there.
Dedication.
Yeah.
I love her to death, and she deserves everything, and she definitely deserves the shout out, and she deserves all the follows, and she deserves all the compliments on the video, because the video is fantastic for anyone who hasn't gone and watched it already.
Awesome. I'm very excited about this. I backed this.
I saw. Thank you so much.
Well, it's funny because I wanted to make sure I got the right one. So I wanted to, the digital rewards are always great, but for me, it's like, for things like this, I want the actual cover.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure that I got Heartwood cover and the Immortal Souls and Power Magic. I wanted to make sure that I did my best to support you and get everything that I don't have. So, I was like, I'm just going to do it.
Did you pledge to the soft cover library?
Mm-hmm.
Because I made that tier super limited because Power and Magic Volume 1 is almost out of print.
See, that's why I got it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to get this.
And I've increased the number of slots available to that tier
I saw
4
that.
times now in the past 3 days because it keeps selling out every time I blink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, all of y'all.
Well, see, that was the reason why I went for
so
it.
carefully before I on here because I want to make sure y'all have books when the time comes.
But that's why I went for it. I was like, oh my God, this is the last, like, I'm getting the last spot right now. And then you increased it, which is fine. I'm still glad that I'm getting it. I'm like, I need to definitely.
Oh yeah, like even with the increase, as I can do. Right now, 200 power in Magic.
Mm.
And this Kickstarter has already eaten about 60 of them. So yeah, pretty soon that book just won't exist unless we can do a reprint Kickstarter.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm glad I got it. And if y'all haven't gotten it, you should, because I'm definitely going to be reading it and showing it off when I get it.
Yay.
Yes, and I'm gonna second that. As I was listening and chatting, I was literally on the Kickstarter myself doing my pledge, and for me, it's more so like I want to learn more about something that I may not be as familiar with, and so you hear. I know about non-binary, and I'm meeting more people who identify as such. And for me, it was more like, okay, 1, I'm intrigued, and 2, I want to also be educated more so that people can't say, oh, well, we don't have it. It's not there. It doesn't exist. And then you can be like, bam, here you go. This is what, it does exist. So, because, I mean, that's always the excuse that people say, well, we don't know, or it's not enough, or there's not anything out there. And so, the fact that there is, people can have it, this actual example here to show it. So I'm just like, kudos, and thank you for, making this exist. So
thank you so much for supporting. And yeah, it's one of those things where more and more lately I see people like, I want to help and be diverse. I want to hire some diverse people. # diversity.
Diverse humans.
Can you have diverse humans? I want to hire someone Asian. Does anyone know any Asians? And it's like, dude, do you know how many like anthologies there are right now for like every category of human being? Like, point them and be like, here is a resume for like 30 people. And these anthologies do end up feeling like a resume booklet at the end, or like a catalog of who to hire, because it's like you're like, oh, I don't know who. Here's a whole book of them plus their work. Figure it out.
Exactly, yeah. And I also want to echo what Grace is saying, was mentioning before, because it's like, number one, having that big resume book there, it's an easy point for entry for people who don't know, and I admittedly I'm very new to understand, or to learning about non-binary people, and apologies if I mess up on pronouns. I do my best, but I definitely make mistakes. But it's I think it's important, and I think that a book and art, is a way that people can number one, learn more, and also without being a pain in the ass to the marginalized group in question. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Because obviously from my own corner of marginalization, I know where like always having to be the explainer is a pain at times, you know what I mean? And so like, I think that this is perfect. You have a collection of stories and a range of viewpoints and a range of ethnicities, like within, non-binary. So I think it's really important. And I think it is a perfect way for people to understand more.
Oh, definitely. And it sort of reminds me of how, that that saying of like, you know, it's not my job to educate you, educate yourself.
Right.
I agree with the spirit of that, except for the part where no one educates themselves.
Right.
Like
Exactly. Yeah.
Because even if like, though I get what people are saying, saying, hey, this is my Twitter where I come to hang out with my friends. I don't know you, get out of my face, which is absolutely fair. Yeah. But like the book that person is going to go read to educate them, probably written by someone of that experience, educating other people. So it's like, it's already like educate yourself already essentially means go read a book. Books are how we sort of, books are compendiums of knowledge. That's what they are. It's a way of writing down some information and having it be accessible to everyone. And people often, like, I guess because they're reading the words a person is saying on the internet instead of standing in front of them, though people expect to be educated in person too. There's sort of this feeling of like, oh, this is like a book I can interrogate. And it's like, no,
that's an interesting point. Right.
There's someone who has the exact knowledge and explanation that you're looking for, who is from this identity group, who has already written it down in very meticulous detail with an editor, with a team to like make sure they're explaining it well, and they got paid to do it. So, and you're going to pay for the information. So it's all on the up and up. So just go let yourself be educated, because when it's not even educate yourself, it's let yourself be educated. Because I feel like so many people disregard the fact that books are full of everything that POC and like queer people are constantly saying on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
If we're saying it out there, someone wrote it down specifically to be read. So go read them.
Right. You know, as you were speaking about that, it made me think about, and we don't have to get too deep into the insane times that we're in, but like what it made me think about is the fact that people have always had, you know, well, privileged people have always been very violently opposed to having their knowledge expanded or having their point of view expanded. But it's become increasingly hostile. The hostility that they demonstrate in, you know, not wanting to understand other people has become that much louder. And I do think that it is a direct opposition to the progress and maybe to the, albeit limited, but still like, you know, present progress that's been made as far as, you know, marginalized groups of people being heard, you know what I mean? And so there's kind of like an ugly backlash, and it's like a pendulum that swings back and forth. And I think for all of us of various marginalized groups, that's why, like, you know, when you see kind of like scrapping between marginalized groups, it's whack, you know, because it's kind of like, you know, there is a larger fight that needs to be won, and it's kind of like all the divisions don't help, you know. And so I guess what I'm saying is that, like, you know, you just made me really think about the viciousness of which people oppose understanding, you know, different groups of people. And you definitely see that. I definitely see that in particular with non-binary people, and, you know, just politicians and just regular people and people who watch the channel which shall not be named, you know, just really getting angry about the idea that they have to understand or they have to recognize somebody's humanity.
Right. And I also think that, to sort of piggyback on your point, it's not only the whole not being educated, but now there's this whole thing where people are now being misinformed and being educated wrong, I guess is the best way I can say it, you know, with just, you know, get people like Alex Jones who want to, you know, go on the other side and sort of promote these conspiracy theories that make absolutely no sense, but meanwhile have such an unbelievable following, and it's all based on disinformation. And it's not like these people don't read or don't want to read. They just want to read what makes them comfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which generally is associated with misinformation and ignorance. And that's a whole thing that is just hard in itself. So we could say, go read a book, but hopefully what you're reading is the right book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
Right.
Hopefully you're reading, the autobiography of Malcolm X and not like Mein Kampf. You know what I mean? Like it's just very interesting where we are right now.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's and the same thing applies to people. Like you can read the right or wrong book, and you can ask the right or wrong person for the information.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, and that's why, like, when you're trying to learn about the experiences of others, it's like you don't go to one person. It's not like what the first person told you.
Absolutely.
Because no community is is monolithic, no matter what they try to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a place where like white people and like just people of any sort of privilege tend to trip up on is they want their discomfort to end.
Right.
They want their own discomfort to be over. Like even if they're like super well-meaning and honestly want to learn, they come at it from a stance of, okay, but where is the ultimate piece of information that like I can just read and now I know it and now I'm done feeling uncomfortable. I can just say I know it now. And it's like that doesn't exist. You're never like there is no endpoint to like understanding and like empathy. You just kind of it's more of an openness, an attitude of openness and like believing people when they tell you their experience. And it's not even like believing in the sense of like, this one person from this group said this, and I believe it's like that 100% of the time. So now when a different person from this group tells me this, I'm going to be like, well, this one's a liar, or one of them is lying to me. It's like, no, now you know that there are different thoughts among these people because they are different people.
Imagine that.
Imagine it.
Oh man, yeah. It's like the first person from your group already got to me. So I have no more hard drive space for new information.
Oh my god, that's true.
Oh man. Oh, we have a question from Twitter from the Ether. Shout out. So the question is, has there been a situation where anyone has resisted expanding their knowledge about another group, etc.? So I guess I'll throw that question to you first, Joe, and then I guess to everyone, to the whole panel.
Okay. Obviously, yes, but I'm trying to think of a specific example. The first example that comes to mind is one that happened in public and was really messy, where I was in a school library, my school library in college, and someone said something that was racist. I don't even remember what they said at this point, but we were alone in a computer room, like me, that person, and one other person. And that day I just was not feeling it. And I spoke up from like 3 rows ahead and was like, why would you say that? That doesn't make any sense. And I kept trying to explain why their attitude about this thing was wrong. And it just got very, very heated until the third person, who was the only other person in the room and was a white person, just finally spoke up, looked at the white person I was talking to, and was like, you need to calm down and listen to what she's saying. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, because I was losing it. I was losing my cool. And having someone else just be like, hey, just so you know, fellow white person, the person of color who's talking to you right now is not crazy. They're actually right, and you're just not getting it. It was like the clouds parted. Me, and it actually did help with which I kind of begrudge. Like, I'm grateful to the person that saw the that I could use some backup, but I kind of still feel that grudge of like, why did this start going better after a white person backed me up? Which it always sucks. And I mean, it's sort of emblematic of like how white supremacy operates. Like, even if someone is just like in this like quote unquote pure debate state where they're like, no, it's not that they hate you or think you're inferior. They really aren't getting it. And they keep debating the point that's stuck in their brain because it just feels so true to them still. There's this receptiveness and openness that happens when someone gets told something by someone that looks like them.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that might apply to like everyone of every race to a little bit of an extent. Like oh, if you're like my own, I might trust you have my best interest in heart more. But you know, with white people, it's like, well, your best interest is kind of dangerous, so you need to realize that as well. But yeah, definitely been there many times about all sorts of things, about queerness, about race. One other quick example is someone brought a friend I didn't know to my birthday party once. Like, it was a small little gathering at my house, and they're like, oh, can I bring this friend? They're cool. And I'm like, okay, sure, you're cool, so I believe you. And then
that's the trap.
That's the trap. And then that person immediately said things that were not cool. And on my birthday, I just had to kind of look at them and be like, hey, look, I don't know you. I don't want to assume you're a bad person, okay? Just like, you're really triggering me right now. I need you to leave my house because it's my birthday.
Yes.
Wow.
But you shouldn't even have to give that reason. Like, you really all should be able to say is that, can you just leave my house? Like, you shouldn't even have to qualify why I don't want you here. Like, nope, just go. Just leave.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I don't know if y'all have ever watched Naruto, but if you have, there's a character named Sakura in it who has a very diplomatic way of responding to things. But then there's like the version of her thinking what she's saying in a completely like off the wall, screaming, losing her fucking mind way. And I can definitely be like that sometimes, because with my social anxiety, like it basically makes me feel like whatever feelings I'm having, regardless of whether they're valid or not, or like reasonable or not, or whatever, I doubt all of them. I just doubt what I want and need constantly. So in that moment, I was like, I'm going to be super polite about how upset I am, because I don't know if I should be mean to this person. Maybe I'm the problem, which is bullshit, but that comes with the brain space that I'm in.
Wow. No, that's real. That's real. Tony and Grace, have you had any experiences? I mean, obviously you have, but like, any you'd like to share?
I'm trying to think on that.
You know, it's so. The question is so expansive in my mind, because for two reasons. One, I work in higher education, so I feel every fucking day I'm always like trying to resist the ability to, you know, expand someone's knowledge. And then there's always family, you know, and
oh God.
I'm not gonna say that I am the most educated person in my family, because I am not the only one who went to college, but you know, I always feel that I'm always arguing a point of, to me, what would be common sense. And I think in both cases, it's always about masculinity in some way, and how men sort of try to dominate either conversations that involve women, or, you know, just regular bullshit that I just, you know, sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I don't have the energy to just tell you that you're mansplaining right now. Or I don't have the energy to tell you that what you think is a comfortable behavior is actually not for some of the girls that go to our school. I work at Barnard, so it's an all woman institution. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't have the energy to always try to correct people's thoughts when they should know this. You know what I mean? Particularly, and I'll end at this point, particularly is, one, I grew up with mostly women. So the very few men in my family, so it's mostly women. So my thing is, you should know the way you are, and two, again, working at an all women's college, you should come into this environment and know that there's certain behaviors that are not cool. I mean, at least I think so. Unless it's just me, which I know it's not.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I have, similar. So on the higher ed side, I'm like on the teaching side. So oftentimes, so I had to put it in my syllabus. Like, so this is a, safe space. This is a place where people should be able to voice their opinions without feeling judged. Everybody's not going to agree. And even if you do disagree, then there's a way that you, respond. So having to do that, and then because I primarily teach courses that are, the content is African Americans, so whether it's a Black popular culture, whether it's African American history, so periodically I will have non-Black students in my course, and so sometimes my Black students will come to tell me that, well, we didn't want to say anything because we didn't want to offend, and I'm like, so, and I always use the idea of so when you're in your U.S. history class, do you think your professors sugarcoat what they're going to say because they don't want to offend students in their class? Do you think they think about that? Is that what you think comes to mind? And, many of them are like, no. And I was like, well, this is the class you signed up for. So you have to be prepared for what is going to happen. And nobody's going to make you feel comfortable about your guilt. I'm just not going to do that. So I've had, some students kind of test those waters, and, then I have to say, but you signed up for this class and this is what you came in here for. So you either deal with that or you leave my class. So
that's real.
That is real. And necessary, I would add,
Yeah.
Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
So a couple years ago.
I like this. This is like therapy, man.
So a couple years ago, there was a program that was happening on campus, and they were giving out tiaras to the students. And one of the students gave me one. And I'm just like, sure, I'll wear it. You know what I mean? I don't really care. So I was wearing it, and I wasn't acting silly. I was just wearing it around before the start of the event. And I had one of these dudes come up to me, and he was like, I'm like, what's wrong with it? Like my tiara? He was like, well, some of the guys are wondering, if you funny now. And I'm just like,
what?
Oh my God.
What are you really trying to say?
Right.
All right. So and he's like, oh, well, they feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, just because you uncomfortable doesn't mean I'm uncomfortable. I'm good.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm sorry that this is offending your masculinity, but I'm just going to keep wearing it. And if somehow that changes your view of me, oh, well. You know what I mean? He backed off, and I guess he wasn't expecting that reaction. I guess he thought I was just going to take it off and be like, oh, you're right. I'm a man. What is that?
Right.
So that has stuck with me for a while. And it's one of those things where it's just you can do one little thing and it affects other people for whatever reason. And a part of me is just like, maybe me wearing this is making you feel a certain way, and you need to explore it.
Yep. Maybe you need to get in your own feelings and figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But straight men have so many feelings, Grace. It's really hard.
I know.
A lot. I have a related one. I actually have two. I had one in mind, and then Tony's reminded me about another. This one actually took place on Twitter, where occasionally drama happens. And
occasionally?
Every now and then, But it was I guess it was a couple years ago, and it was when the masculinity is so fragile hashtag was really popular. It was the day that it was started. I can't recall exactly who started it, but it was a lot of ladies were really sharing some really insightful tweets, and I was just retweeting. I wasn't jumping in and mansplaining and trying to make it about me. But what I was noticing was on the hashtag, as with any positive hashtag, there's always people trying to pollute it. And there was a lot of dudes And specifically because like a lot of Black women were tweeting, there was a lot of Black dudes that were getting really defensive. So all I did, my only contribution was I just tweeted essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but I tweeted, you know, guys who are getting bent out of shape about the masculinity so fragile hashtag are essentially proving the need for it.
Right.
You know, and I closed my tweet by just saying, like, you know, maybe just take a break from speaking and listen, and you might learn something. That's all I said. Pretty inoffensive.
I feel like I remember that. Yeah,
you might have. And
I remember that. I think I remember that.
And they came. They tried to come for me, like all these guys. And I don't know about y'all, but like, there's the whole like when to and when to not get into a Twitter back and forth. I generally don't do it. The times where I will go back and forth is if I feel it's somebody who is at the very least open to actually having a real discussion.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and you can usually smell it. There's some people that just kind of want to come at you and just say whatever they want to say, and they're not open to, you know, taking in and considering other information. So, and pretty much everybody that came at me at this point, it was all just trying to rain their opinions upon me. And, you know, it was a lot of stuff, kind of like what Tony was talking about, a lot of like, oh, who's a real man? You? And then like this one dude was like, he just tweeted, "Stop telling me how to feel." And,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like,
oh God.
I was like, and I was like, you know, I gotta admit, I actually enjoyed not responding to them because they started getting like more agitated by the lack of response.
Right.
So that dude actually tweeted me again, and he said again like the same tweet. He was like, "Don't tell us how to feel." And I just was like, okay. And he tweeted it a third time. So I think he thought it wasn't going through or something.
Oh my God.
And I just was like, and in that instance, I was like, the other reason why I didn't like further engage is because I think my original point was very clear and true. So I was like, I don't need to try to convince you because I spoke the truth. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. So that was one instance, and the other one was at an art opening. I had it was at a gallery, and I had just, you know, it was a reception for some of my paintings, and like it was great. It was a great night. I loved the gallery. Like there's a lot of, you know, really cool people that came through, and there was this one young, you know, kind of yuppie-ish like white couple, very friendly, kind of liberal seeming, and the guy came up to me. We were having a nice conversation, and then he says like, "Hey, let me ask you about your painting." And he points to a painting I had done of Malcolm X, and there were two Malcolm X paintings in that show, and he was like, "Why did you paint that guy?" Like, you know, he's kind of like, you know, and he's kind of like expressing his white guy angst about Malcolm X. And I feel like he was trying to feel me out because he's like, it was almost like, "Hey, you seem so cool, like, and you don't seem like you want to kill me, but why did you paint him?" Like, those weren't his exact words, but that was the general vibe. You know what I'm saying? So here, and this goes back to Tony's point about nuance. Here I am, like, taking it at face value, and I was like, oh, you know, this is where, and I spoke about like why I painted each of the paintings, what the theme was, you know what I mean, about it. And I also spoke about the fact that like between those two paintings, it represented like three different phases of his life, and that there was, you know, that, and I was getting into the nuance of it. I was getting into, you know, his history and all types of things. And I get done saying all the stuff I said, and he's like, "But why did you paint him?" Like, you know, and it's like everything I said had like totally
just went right over.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then now I'm like, all right, I start seeing what's going on. But I'm just like, then I was like, you know what? I'm still gonna come with more nuance. And so I just kept like speaking about it, you know what I mean? And I also use as a jumping off point for a larger discussion about race and perception. And like it was funny because he ended up being like I could tell I had not moved the needle at all as far as his discomfort. But he ended up being like, oh yeah, you know, that's pretty cool, man. You should come. They were having like a cookout the next day or something. He's inviting me over, and I was like, all right, you know. But needless to say, I did not go.
Oh,
Right.
that would
Of course not.
be
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I could only imagine. It'll be like, hey, check out my new black best friend, and this guy is crazy. He does portraits of radicals. But anyway, so those are my two stories.
I felt like dread seep into my heart when you said you were invited to a cookout by him, and I was like, you didn't go, did you? Oh no!
No, God, no. That would have this was before Get Out. But I'm pretty sure it would have probably, like, you know, had some similarities.
I'm over here like retroactively, needlessly. Get out, Mark.
Don't go.
Right, even though I didn't go, you're still yelling. Yeah. Oh man! Wow. Yeah. So I guess that's our therapy hour. You know,
That was very good. That was
It was great, actually. I loved that question.
Yeah.
That should be incorporated in every episode in some way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, yeah. Audience, any other questions? Definitely tweet them to us on the Black Comic Chat hashtag. So Joe, before the show, you mentioned that I think you may have some thoughts about some entertainment. So let's what have you been watching, and tell us your thoughts.
Okay, so first of all, I want y'all to know that I started watching. Well, no, I watched an episode before, but I watched the vast majority of Luke Cage yesterday in preparation for this podcast.
Okay.
I love it.
You may have done some podcasts on
it left me speechless. It was way better than the first one, and I liked the first one a lot. And my main thing that made me so happy about Luke Cage this season was the diasporic theme
of
it.
Yes.
It was so good. I basically I was a little on the fence toward the beginning just because the first two episodes didn't they didn't grip me right away, but the whole season kind of felt like it slowly built into the greatness that it is. And I think the moment where I was like, whoa, and I just sort of snapped my eyes and was paying more attention to everything was when Luke was fighting with Claire in Claire's apartment.
Oh yeah.
And he's yelling about being a black man and what he goes through every day and how he goes outside and there's racism, etc. And then Claire just screams at him, I don't have to leave my house to experience racism.
Yes.
I was like, are we going there? We're going there. I was so happy. I was so happy because no one ever brings that up on TV. Ever. And I was so happy when she said, I'm Afro-Cubana. I was like, and no one ever says what Rosario Dawson is. Like, they never say what she is. They just put her in a role and they're like,
boom.
Y'all can think whatever you want about what she is.
Yep.
Like, we're just going to non-spoken, she's black in this movie, and we're leaving it at that. Or non-spoken, she's Latinx in this role, and we're leaving it at that. And this is, I can't remember a previous time. There have probably been other times, but this is the first time that I've watched a thing with Rosario Dawson in it, where she was allowed to open her mouth and in a script be like, I am Black and Latinx. I was like, oh my God, what? Yes. It was a very good moment. I was very happy about it. Also, I was really happy about Bushmaster just throughout, because I was really worried in the beginning that Bushmaster was just going to be like, oh, here comes these Jamaicans. Who knows what their problem is? But
like,
then, like
Predator 2.
Yeah, it just goes into his whole backstory and like his community and like why he should be mad and like just everything. And like him talking, or not him, but Anansi talking with Mariah and them having that moment of tension where it's like, yep, I'm Jamaican and you're African American, and there's stuff to be said about that. Yeah. I'm just like, there's so much stuff to be said about like just Black people in the US. And when I say Black people, I mean like from wherever the hell it is that like the Black person question came from, like whichever country, that is so rarely ever said anywhere. So that was really important to me about this season. Yeah.
We did a few episodes. Actually need to upload the third one, I believe. But we did a few episodes. Yeah, we need to finish that.
Yeah, we do.
I think we only have one more left to go. But yeah, like everything you said, and obviously for myself, you know, as a Jamaican-born person who spent most of his life here, you know, I've definitely seen the cultural clashes, and there was a lot there. And yeah, that stuff you said about Claire is real. Like I don't know, I want to see a season that's either Claire focused or just where, like, you know, she's there for all 12 or 13 episodes.
Right.
Because I mean, honestly, they should just have a show, call it Claire, and then it's how she but then it will be how she sort of sees all the different heroes. Yeah. Like it'll feature all of them. It's like Defenders in reverse. You know what I mean? But it's about her, but like they all sort of co-starring, and they're, you know, how she drifts into their lives. I would so be down for that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I would definitely.
Yeah, same.
I mean, she knows everything about just about all of them, if not all of them. So I mean,
all the bodies on.
Yeah, it was real. Like, what did you? Just out of curiosity, like, did you get to the Iron Fist episode?
Oh yeah. I finished the season.
You finished the whole season. Okay.
Yeah, I liked the Iron Fist episode. I thought he was annoying in the way that his character's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
While also like actually being useful to Luke when he needed it.
It was minimal.
That's another thing I liked. There was a Iron Fist episode, and not just like Iron Fist is in this season. That's all they needed. Though I was upset there wasn't more Colleen and Misty together.
Yeah.
Right.
That has to be a series, right? Like, I would imagine.
They have to.
That would do well. They need to get on it. So I don't know. I know that but I did love what they did with those two.
Oh yeah. I think they make a good pair in that Iron Fist kind of needs to be knocked down back to earth a lot, and Iron Fist gets to be so white and chill, and sometimes Luke needs to chill for a second.
Yeah,
like the whole time in the barbershop where Luke was like, wow, we were quiet for a while and actually thought of something.
Yeah, some good stuff. And we spoke about I'm sorry, Tony.
No, I'm agreeing.
Oh no, I was gonna say we in our episodes we also spoke about that other moment in the barbershop with Shades and Comanche.
Yeah.
Just the kind of, you know, what's really interesting about that moment is it was really artfully done, and I don't think that they were like, well, again, there's that nuanced word, but it was very nuanced. But I've had a few conversations where people didn't quite catch it right away, and I can understand why, because it wasn't all like
overt.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't like sensationalized. It was like a real conversation, you know. And I feel like the way they were speaking about it was just taking place in the way that two guys in their circumstances, or those two guys, would speak about that, you know. So, but it was really I didn't necessarily. I did notice there was some type of spark with those two initially in the first couple episodes, but
are they?
Yeah.
Is it canon? Are they supposed to be into each other quietly?
I mean, I don't think it's canon because those two characters were introduced back in the 70s, back in the 70s,
right,
and they weren't trying to dive into, you
know
what I mean?
Canon in the show though.
Oh yeah. They are.
Okay. I honestly couldn't tell if it was because there's a thing where I'm like, if it's not explicitly said, I also don't want to be like, oh, it has to be this, because men can never have an intimate friendship.
Right.
I mean, if it is, I like that better.
Within the show, it's definitely canon. But so within the show, the official thing is, like, when they were in prison, you know, they were definitely, you know, romantically involved. But afterwards, like, Shades was like, well, I'm out, you know, prison is prison, and we're in the world, so that's not, you know, not how it goes. And Comanche was basically like, it didn't change for me. You know what I mean? So I don't know, it just added the extra layer of complexity and tragedy with Comanche. Like, you know, I mean, even though he was ratting out his boy, but you know, and then like his mom, like, she was not buying what Shades was selling.
Oh, that poor woman.
And I will say, you know, probably to Joe's point, is that I didn't catch it the first time around, and I fully admitted that. I don't know what I was doing, that I didn't really catch it the first time, but it was brought to my attention, and I was like, wait a minute, did they really have that conversation? I had to watch that episode again, and I was like, holy shit, this is a big moment. You know, because you don't expect to see this, not just in any Marvel series, but in anywhere. Right. You know, two guys actually talking this way, two like hardcore, I'm gonna kill you guys talking this way. It was just very interesting. And at that point, it really colored the way I saw Comanche from that point on. Not in a bad way, but just sort of like, I now get everything he now did. Because before it was just like, he just seemed like one of those guys that just has to fuck with his boy at every moment and make it seem like I'm going to jab you because you're not man enough. But now thinking about it in a different way, like, you're really mad because you have actual feelings, right? So I thought that was very interesting. So he's basically saying, you can't tell me how to feel. Don't tell me how to feel.
Don't tell me how to feel.
It's crazy though. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
I think whenever something queer in a show is like subtle enough, I've taken to like assuming they're not trying to give me queer representation, because like there's so little of it that when I think it's there, I'm like, oh, but I doubt that's what they wanted to do. These shows never give me what I want, so it can't be that.
I literally had that conversation with somebody, that exact same thing earlier today. We were talking about that, how because it was so subtle, it's kind of like, so was this intentional, or were they really trying to do this, or did it just kind of like happen and it just, you know, turned out to be that way? So yeah, definitely was thinking those same lines.
Yeah, you know, that's always a really, so, you know, when you look at the Hollywood machine and just, I don't know, just media in general, there's definitely instances where they try to like sneak in their quote unquote diversity or insert group here. I would say in this instance, it definitely wasn't sneaking, but like I guess that was my initial point. Like I can see both sides. Like I picked up on it initially, but I think that's because like right from episode 1, I was like, there's something there with these two. But by the same token, like it definitely didn't feel like the trying to hide it thing. Because you know what drives me crazy is like when you watch like commercials and they try to have a multi-ethnic group of people. But I've gotten so good at spotting like the like black lady in the back of the group, and they always like cut it so it's like they just they get credit for her being there, but she's not like like really prominently there, and like there's all types of weird gymnastics that gets done with that stuff. But yeah, like so I know what you guys are talking about. Like sometimes they totally just try to like sneak stuff in so they can get credit for having represented something, but not enough to make intolerant people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I did think that this barbershop scene was well done, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was excellent to me, even though it flew over my head what was actually happening.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is a really intense conversation about either getting out of crime or staying in crime.
Right.
I guess you could read it that way. Yeah, you could read it that way.
I mean, for me, I figured it wasn't like it was like too much of them pushing. Well, okay, I don't say. I mean, to me, I feel like maybe they could be pushing the envelope considering the relationship between Shades and Mariah. Like that made my skin crawl. Like, I mean, that made me uncomfortable.
Did you need an adult?
It's like Shades and Comanche. That didn't make me uncomfortable. That made me actually be like, okay. Like I'm tuning into this, but like, Mariah and Shades, I was like, okay. I don't know how I feel about that. Like this is yeah.
Well, that kind of blows my mind a little bit because the relationship between Mariah and Shades was so uncomfortable, and yet his relationship with Comanche was very comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
this
true.
is why I love this show. Right here. This is right here.
Look at that.
Connecting the dots.
Absolutely.
So we had Joe, have you seen Sorry to Bother You?
No, not yet. I have to. Oh,
Okay.
I can't talk about it. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I haven't either.
All right,
You
Tony
haven't seen it yet, Tony?
No, I know. I'm gonna get yelled at. It's fine.
No, it's all good, man. Just, but make sure you do see it because it's worth it. Yeah.
It is.
Solidarity, Tony.
Yes.
We'll postpone our Sorry to Bother You discussion for later.
Right.
But needless to say, I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Yeah, and just one. I can never say this without spoiling anything, but I think that Boots Riley, who directed it and wrote it, he's a MC of the Coup, which is a group that's like done political music since forever, and I think that movie underscored what we talk about all the time, like why there needs to be a range of creators specifically. You know what I mean? Because when you watch this movie, like there's a lot of good movies out there, and there's a lot of movies that might touch on the subject that he's dealing with. But I just remember walking out of it and being like, that is a movie that like only he specifically with like his point of view could have made.
Right.
And like it just comes together really well. But yeah. See you when y'all get a chance.
Yes. And I know for
Absolutely.
me, and without spoiling it, like having lived in Oakland, like it was also like this, like, oh yes, it was, in the same way that Luke Cage, I felt like does really good treatment of Harlem. I felt like, he really did justice for Oakland. Like you can really see all of Oakland and not just these like small subparts. Yeah.
That's a good point, Greg, because I mean, obviously you're way more familiar with Oakland than I am, but I know obviously like, a lot of times you see representations like Boys in the Hood and a lot of other things, but like this was again nuance. Nuance is the word of the night, man. We're just gonna have to play a drinking game with nuance.
Hashtag nuance.
Yeah, hashtag nuance. But there was a lot of nuance in just the different types of people that you saw. And again, that's what happens when I think you have people behind the camera and the pen.
Especially those who are invested in it too. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's all the way invested.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah. Shout out to look. We talked about it without spoiling anything.
Look at that.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. So yeah. So what else? I know Tony, you had put some things on the dock.
Well, Disney owns everything. I just want you to know that they just bought. It's just been approved, not just, but I think that the Fox deal went through, so they own everything. And I guess we'll see what happens. And there's always these rumors flying around that the X-Men are going to be in this and Fantastic Four are going to be in that. I do not anticipate anything different happening with Infinity War. I mean,
I don't either.
Avengers 4.
I mean, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
But people, they're gonna be chirping for the next year and a half. But I just thinking about it, it's just like, I don't go to Disney often, but I'm sure the next time I go to Disney, it's just going to be Baltimore and Marvel, which is both good and bad.
Yeah.
Good in the sense that there's the characters all in one, bad because it's all very expensive, and that's my opinion. So, while we're on the subject of movie, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say my one little Pyrrhic victory as far as Disney buying Fox is that Disney killed the New Mutants movie.
Is it dead? It's done?
According to my sources, and my sources are my partner reading the internet more than I do.
I need to look this up. I hope that's true.
They told me that. Oh yeah. Okay. So
I'm very okay.
It was so it sounded like they wanted to, like Fox wanted to make it like kind of a horror movie-esque, like superhero movie, which I would have been down for because that hasn't been done, and I'd be really interested to see a take like that. But then they couldn't stick to their guns. They had to be like, oh no, we're postponing the movie to change it and make it a comedy. And I'm like, everything doesn't have to be funny, but okay. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were going to try to make it a comedy.
Oh yeah, they were sort of making it more in line with like the general action comedy, like the superhero trend right now. Yeah. And the reason I'm happy it got canned, even though like I could have just chosen not to see it if I didn't think it sounded good. I'm happy it got canned because they cast a white Brazilian dude to play a character who started out as a black Brazilian dude in the comics. And I'm like, no thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm here with you. Yeah. That's why I was like, they did what? Oh my. Yeah.
Yeah, we're good on that.
Yeah, we're good. Now I feel a lot better right now.
Yeah.
Speaking about movies, it says here that we need to give a minute to hate on the Venom trailer, or at least the CGI.
Oh Lord, I have a few things.
Wait, what are we hating on? I didn't hear you.
We are hating on the Venom trailer, or at least the CGI in the Venom trailer.
Yeah. So yes, this past week there was there have been 2 Venom trailers that were released previously, and San Diego Comic-Con happened, and there was a trailer that was released there that didn't hit the internet until this week. And man, there's like did anybody see it?
No,
I saw it.
Okay, like, well, am I tripping? Like,
watch it right now.
Okay,
yeah, like, do I need to check this out? Like,
you know what? I don't think that you're tripping. I think that it's a bit much. You know what I mean? I think they were like, oh, we have this character that can do all these weird things, and we're just going to play it to the fullest.
Right.
But I think what really sticks to me is I think at the end of the trailer, how they kind of morphed the 2 images.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was cool, but it was weird.
Yeah, you're true. That's true. Yeah. And
there is nothing in this trailer that, besides Riz Ahmed, there's nothing in this trailer that's gonna make me want to see this movie.
Yeah. And there's that specific point where he like lifts the dude up. And it's just like you could see like the green screen lines like around him practically. I don't know. It's just,
God, that's horrible.
You couldn't. I mean, it might not be that bad, but you know what? It felt comparable to the 1997 Spawn film.
Oh yes! Wow. No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And I'm like, yo, it's just 2018, you know.
Like, literally, most of Infinity War is CGI. You can't even do a fraction of that.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like,
and this actually goes to what you were just talking about, Joe, as far as like trying to make it jokey. It was really awkward. If you watch it with the volume on, like
volume on.
there's a part towards the end where like it's supposed to be a funny part, and he's like, first I'm gonna eat your arms, and I'm gonna eat your legs, and then I'm gonna eat your spleen, and then he has something about it. I'm gonna spit out a turd or something like that.
Oh
no, you're gonna be like a turd in the wind or something like that. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Oh God.
And I'm like, yo, that's not how you do humor. And
Shakespeare over here, I tell you.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my Venom hate minute. You know,
we need to have more hate moments from you, Marcus. I just want you to know.
Well, I'm not generally filled with hate, though.
That's the best part. That's what I'm saying. That's the best part.
I'm sorry, Grace. What were you saying?
I was gonna say I can add to that. I can give you one something else to hate on. So I had put on the doc about Daredevil. So they're definitely gonna be having that coming out 2018. That's not the thing to hate on though.
Okay.
But that in my further reading, I saw that Iron Fist is supposed to be premiering September 7th of this year.
Ooh, are they trying to sneak it out?
No.
There was a trailer.
Oh, there is?
There is a trailer. Yeah. But did you see the picture?
I saw the mask. I saw
the picture of the mask. Yeah. Oh my god.
All right, so all right, I do have a little bit more hate in my heart.
It looks like a lemon drop. Like you've had lemon drops as a kid.
A lemon drop? Oh
yeah, his mask was like a lemon drop.
Yeah. Okay,
I've got to look this up. I've got to.
And you know what was weird? All right. So this is the thing, right?
Marcus hates. Keep it going.
the first season, one of my gripes there's so many gripes. I can't even pick out my gripes from the first season of Iron Fist. But like one of the things I said is like I kind of got tired of seeing like Finn Jones walking around with his face and his hair, and like I was like, yo, put the mask on him, like put the classic mask on him. You don't have to make it like as campy of a 70s outfit. You know what I mean? But give him some cool like Daredevil bandana thing or something. And but then they gave me what I was asking for in this trailer. Fault. And I was like, yeah, I was like, that's not really well, they don't listen to me. They don't listen to me or they wouldn't have made a season 2.
Oh, I know. Okay.
But it does look like a lemon head.
It does.
It does. I'm gonna give you that for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's my second minute of hate. Anybody gotta.
But some good stuff is what you posted on the James Baldwin "If Beale Street Could Talk" trailer that dropped on yesterday on his birthday. Which I mean, James Baldwin could do no wrong in my book. So
you can,
and Barry Jenkins and this trailer, I'm like, yes, y'all did that. Thank you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, wait, is this the first of his fictional works? Is this the first film?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's about time. Like there's so much there and so much. Yeah, and Barry Jenkins is a perfect person to do it.
I think it's just a matter of like because that's how I feel with like Octavia Butler stuff. It's like finding the person that's going to do it justice. Like you just can't get anybody to do do it. You got to find somebody who's going to really like take the time to massage it, do what it needs to be done to it. And so I think definitely feel like Barry Jenkins is going to definitely do that.
Yeah, definitely. Before I forget, the Ether had a second question, a part 2 to the first question. And that question was, is there a situation where you have resisted being educated about a group, etc.?
That's a good question.
And the thing is, I have answers to this too. I'll let you go first.
I'm thinking.
I feel like the answer is obviously yes.
Mm-hmm.
The question is when.
I know one, but
I know two.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not proud of this, and I certainly learned, very briefly thereafter. But I remember this was back in the '90s, when Tupac was on trial, um, for a rape case, and I hadn't even like really followed it at the time, but I just remember a bunch of us being in the campus center, the black section, and people were talking about it. People were talking about Tupac. And a friend of mine said something to the effect of like, but y'all being the women, love Tupac. Like, why would he need to rape anybody? And I remember like agreeing with him. I was like thinking he had a point, and then one of the women there like really schooled us, and I didn't totally change my mind right there, but I like went home and I thought about what she said and about the idea of rape not being about like attraction or somebody's attractiveness or about somebody needing quote unquote to have sex, and it's about power. And I was very young, you know what I mean, but like that really, I was like, oh, I was really going along with some dumb shit basically, like, and I mean that was like a pivotal moment. I mean, clearly I remember it to this day, but like that was a big turning point for me as far as like, the way that like obviously I hadn't participated in any type of like messed up behavior like that, but the way that like even if you're not doing the offense, like
Right.
as a guy you can easily look the other way or even like make an excuse for other guys toxic behavior. So
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. So that's my example.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, sure. Mine is when I was 14 years old, and I guess long story short, I argued with a girl in class who presented me with the revolutionary idea to me at the time that Black people could not be racist. And I just sort of looked at her and was like, what are you talking about? Anyone can be racist against anybody. And she was like, well, no, that's not how it works. And, she understood the nuance of like white supremacy and like privilege and power and all that stuff at that time. And I super did not. So when someone told me that for the first time, it just sort of, I had a very dictionary definition idea of what racism was in my head, and I was just sort of like, well, you're arguing with the dictionary, you must be wrong. But yeah, it I don't think it was until like college that I started really thinking about race more deeply outside of like my own personal experiences being Cuban, and just sort of seeing how like different power dynamics play against each other depending on what community you're a part of. I think a big part of that was that I grew up immersed in Cuban culture because I grew up in Miami, where like most of the population is Cuban, and Cubans don't talk about race. They, even if there are like darker skinned Cubans in the room and it's not all white Cubans, they don't talk about race. It's sort of like this cultural thing where you pretend that's not a thing. And if someone happens to bring it up, you're just sort of looked at like, why are you making shit up or trying to start problems? And if the conversation gets far enough, it's, oh, I see, you're trying to divide us, which is never taken well. So when I went to college, I was surrounded by white people, like white American people, for the first time in my life. And in that environment, it kind of helped me kind of helped me just sort of realize, like, there sure is a different way that these people are getting treated versus these other people. It's almost like white people don't have to deal with bullshit ever because of their race.
Right.
But yeah, that was something that I was resistant to when it first came up, and that took me quite a while to wrap my head around.
And you know, and you said that was like in grade school that happened to you?
Yeah, in high school.
Oh, high school, yeah. But it's funny because I mean, you see it playing out with grown-ass adults to this day. There's so many people walking around with that. That's a perfect way to put it. That dictionary definition of racism, you know, where it's literally just one person being mean to another person. That's, you know what I mean? And it's like it totally, that lack of understanding like just derails most discussions about race, because it's like you're talking about two different things. And like, so I mean, yeah, I think that's a very common misconception.
Oh yeah, and going back to #nuance, it happens, like, enough adults think that way that I don't even have faith in the word racism anymore as like a helpful word for having the conversation. Like, whenever I like really focus on it, I think like, okay, I'm going to tell this person about white supremacy rather than telling them about racism. Or I'm going to talk to this person about anti-blackness instead of talking about racism. Because I feel like those terms kind of pinpoint. It's very specific. And like, okay, we're going to talk about who benefits and who is like on the, like, receiving the bulk of the damage caused by this. And then we can, if we get past that, we can have a nuanced conversation about the people in the middle who, depending on various choices they make about assimilation and solidarity, can either, help fight racism or benefit from it. It's a lot. And the word racism feels so tainted and diluted that it's like, okay, look, let me just say what we're actually talking about. We're talking about white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I just had a conversation today that I felt the word racism has turned subjective, in the sense that people use it so often that when you say this person is racist, it's almost like, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? And it becomes almost subjective. So I'd rather we talk about, as you were saying, white supremacy, or, participation in a hate group like the KKK or anything like that, and talking about racist, because I don't think people really understand the meaning of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First, let me just say that I've been in that situation, Marcus, where there's always that moment where some woman turns the light on, and you're like, oh shit, I've been thinking about this a whole different, just wrong. And my whole life has been what Joe just said about Latinos not understanding the blackness. You know what I mean? That's like I'm pretty sure there have been times in my life where I've said, no, I'm actually Latino and not black. I just don't remember when, but I know I've said it. And that's probably in high school, and then being corrected in college, because that's what happened. But I think for me, and this is the things that I kind of refuse to be educated on, and it's such a hard way of saying that, but religion. I've been to Catholic school for 12 years, so I get into these situations where you can either walk down the street, or somebody wants to get into a conversation where they want to educate me about religion, and I'm just like, I'm good. I don't really need to know your version of the Bible. I don't really need to know what you feel, because I have been so tainted by the Catholic Church that I feel that everything that is in at least the version of the Bible that I have read has been tainted in a imperialistic way. So that I'm just like, I'm good. And the other thing that I actually refuse to sort of educate myself on is conservatism. I know that we live in a time in which, you know, there are two sides, basically, right and left. And I tried my best to see where the other side is coming from. And I get to a point where it just agitates me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just refuse. At some point, I just refuse. I know that sounds bad, but if we're talking about issues of where I refuse to be educated, those are the two hard lines. Right?
Tony,
yes.
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Please. Please.
I guess my bit of pushback on the Catholicism is that are you referring to instances where someone's actually just trying to teach you what the Bible says, or instances where someone's trying to convince you to believe what the Bible says?
What they believe the Bible says.
Because I wouldn't even count that as someone trying to educate you, because I feel like education has to be true.
Oh.
I like that. I like that.
This is why I love the show.
I like that. That was good.
And let me clarify, like I'm not anti-religion, I'm not anti-Catholic. My best friend is Catholic. I say that with a lot of irony, though my best friend is whatever. But truth in the sense of these are facts you need to know versus this is a truth, like this is a truth they came to that helps them. It's an interpretation of the world that has helped them, not like information you're missing to like be a well-instructed member of society. You know, you can do without this knowledge because it's a very personal sort of truth, not a who raised you, you need to know this kind of truth.
Right.
And with the conservatism, here's the thing, like I have listened to the other side, and it's wrong. The other side is just incorrect. Yeah. I don't think that's resisting your being educated about it. You can, like, you could know all about it and just not agree.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like, I think there's I feel we're already after 11 now. I feel like I could go on about this for 2 hours, but like to be brief about it though, there's the reality that like that binary that we were talking about either right or left. It's like it's bullshit. Like, you know, because I mean it is what we're dealing with, but it's kind of like I always say, like you could talk about right or like, because for instance, like obviously my views in politics, if you had to put in a box, are progressive, and I don't run from that label, you know, but it's like if you say I'm a progressive and you start like painting this picture of exactly what a progressive is, you know, it's kind of like that's where you get into like, no, I have my views because number one, I'm about equality for like everybody, like, you know, and I'm about like a more working towards a more just world, you know, not because it's like, hey, this side is cool and this side has all the cool stuff and has all the cool people. And I would say like a lot of people buy into the latter, into the like, I'm on this team. And I always make the analogy that like Sunday like morning to afternoon is very informative on the way that Americans approach politics, like team sports, because it's like on Sundays you have both you know, the political shows in the morning, and then you have like NFL pregame shows. And if you look at them, they're discussing everything in exactly the same way, you know. And it's kind of like I'm a big Lakers fan, but if the Lakers lose, at the end of the day, that doesn't really impact my life, you know.
Right.
But like with but then again, if you other quote unquote team are some monsters who are like, hey, let's roll back all the emission standards, let's separate, you know, children from their parents, let's, you know, ban Muslims and et cetera, whatever the hell is happening on that given day. You know what I mean? Like that's not even a point of view. That's like well, I guess it's a point of view, but like they've formulated themselves essentially around Fox News. You know, Fox News has been trashed for a long time, but we're in an era where Fox News is in the White House, you know, and Fox News
where it's been legitimized. Yeah,
and they're directly like, you know, speaking to policy, and they're just their membership is larger than ever. So long story short, I'm saying like everything you're saying that both of you are saying, like that is the conservatism that, like, yeah, kind of doesn't need a point of view. And I've heard a few people who are reasonable, who I don't necessarily agree with everything they're about, but they're like, look, I have these, you know, financial views or whatever, but I'm not with the whole idea of like conservatism involves like limiting the rights of this group of people, or like, you know, saying that these people over here are going to hell. You know what I mean? Like I think if you want to talk about that as a point of view, that's fine. Like, because there are people who are saying like, look, I'm not here to hate on people. I just have some views on finance, et cetera, et cetera. That's one thing if you talk about maybe listening to somebody like that, but that's not what people are talking about in 2018 when they talk about conservatives. Right. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get all political.
Yeah. That's another hate minute, I guess.
It's great.
Yeah. But anyway, that's...
Before we sign off, I just want, I'm not sure if everybody heard about Gail Simone taking the lead over at Catalyst and Anthology.
Yeah.
I did hear about that.
Yeah, that's something I think it popped out last week. I thought that's amazing.
Yeah, she's perfect for that.
I think I derailed before Grace got to answer. If you wanted to go, Grace. If not,
yes, no, absolutely, yes. So prior to me getting into the PhD program that I'm in, I think I was very kind of oblivious to this idea of like people in the academy can be privileged, and that there is a privilege in going, you know, to school beyond, you know, the bachelor's degree, or even just going to college for that matter. And me not thinking that I like don't fit into that category, that I don't exude it sometimes. And so early on, I would say things to some of my friends who don't happen to have like a master's degree or something, and I would notice that it would come off kind of like, well, I mean, I have a higher degree than you, so like I feel like I know better. And so it would be me checking my own self, because I would have to kind of listen to myself, be like, oh, wait a minute, okay, I'm not any better than anybody else because I have multiple degrees or whatever. And so just having to kind of like listen to other people that talk about it, and then look at my own self and kind of like self-reflect, kind of made me think, because at first I was like, oh no, that's not me, it's not me, and I'm not saying that, or I'm not doing that. And so definitely having those like self-reflective moments and being like, yep, okay, I need to put that, you know, check on myself as well too. So
yeah, that's real.
Checking yourself is very humbling.
Yes.
Very, very humbling.
And we all need some of it.
Oh,
one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
We have to end on a high note here. We got to.
I'm like, we're going to end with a somber, self-reflective moment of silence.
We got to end on.
Now, everyone, think about what you've done, and we'll see you next week.
Well, how about this? So the fact that we are how many days in? So you said Wednesday, so today's Friday, so we're like basically 3 days in, 2 days in.
Yeah.
And the Kickstarter is, you know, pretty much we're just gonna put that extra push just about over, you know, halfway, you know, through, and we still got 28 days to go. So you know, we cooking with gasoline right here with this Kickstarter. So we just want to keep that momentum, you know, going. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
And like let's get on to the stretch goals.
Yes.
We just got to $23,000 while we were talking.
Oh,
look at that!
Awesome!
Yay!
Awesome! Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely promote this as much as we can.
For sure.
Absolutely. All right.
Cool. That's positive.
Mm-hmm.
That's very positive. Really positive. I really can't wait for this.
Comics are so positive.
Comics by us.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Comics by
These
us.
comics are so positive.
Making that change.
Okay. So, where can we find you?
Yes.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Joamette Gill. That's JoAmetteGil on Twitter. You can also follow the Power and Magic Press Twitter, which is at Power and Magic PR. There you'll definitely find the Kickstarter link because it's all I'll be tweeting about all month long. And yeah, and obviously we're on Kickstarter. Just search Heartwood if you're on there already while you're listening to this when it comes out. And search that term will be the only thing that comes up, and you can go ahead and treat yourself to a beautiful, huge book of non-binary comics.
Yes.
Just for a second, I was kind of hoping you were gonna say you can reach me by airplane.
You can definitely reach me by airplane if you're far enough away that an airplane will fly you to Portland, Oregon. So if you're in Portland, Oregon, you can't reach me by airplane.
And also make sure that you look at all the contributors lists, follow them. They all have either Twitter or Tumblr pages. And then I think if you scroll down to the special thanks area, you could also follow the very special people that have helped out on this Kickstarter. I already started doing that, but then we got into some good conversation. So thank you. And Grace, where can people find you?
So, as I have popped my head back into social media on August 1, you can find me more frequently throughout this month on Twitter at gbreezy20 and on Instagram at lovejones20. And yeah, that's where I am right about now.
Are you traveling anywhere? Are you doing anything?
So I'll be hitting up Martha's Vineyard on tomorrow for the Run and Shoot African American Film Festival that's going to be taking place up there, and also get a little vacay time, and so that'll be next week, and then I'll be back in ATL, and it's my birthday month. Just want to put that out there.
Happy
birthday month!
Yeah, so I'll be celebrating all month long. So yes.
Nice. All right, and Marcus, where can they find you?
You can find me at marcuskwame.com and at Marcus Kwame on Twitter. Trying to post more and on Instagram at Marcus_Kwame. Trying to post more, but I've had my head deep in the drawing table. Trying to finish up a graphic novel by next month. So yeah.
Nice.
Definitely about that.
And if people lived somewhere close to you, they can take classes that you teach. Am I seeing that correctly?
That's right. Yeah. You can find it on my Twitter. I'll try to post about it more. But I'm teaching at the 70 Beekman Gallery in Saratoga, New York. I have some cartooning classes I'm teaching on Mondays. So yeah, definitely anyone is welcome, any experience level. We have a good time. So it's a small group right now, but we're definitely growing it. So. Cool. Yeah, you are welcome.
One final question: the poetry beret that you wear, do you also wear that when you are teaching art?
I hung up my beret. I hung up my beret when I have too much hair to fit under a beret right now. So, yeah.
Hashtag release the
poems. I'll release them. That's cool.
Right. And you can find me at Latinegro, 1N on you can find me on Instagram. If you go to Amazon and type in my full name, Anthony Otero, you will see 2 books that I've written, and you can certainly search those. And I would like you to buy them. It'd be nice.
We would like you to buy them.
Right.
Yeah, of course. And check out Puerto Rico Strong. If you haven't already, I mean, if you haven't checked it out, I don't know where you've been, but I'm in it. So is Joe, and a lot of other artists and writers. All proceeds go directly to the people affected by Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, definitely. And sadly, there's still a lot of need for assistance there. So
yeah,
you know,
mm-hmm.
So let's help. All right,
absolutely. All right, this is a great show.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, Joe, for gracing us with your time and presence.
I love that you said gracing, because you're Grace. Was that intentional?
You know, it wasn't until after I said, like, oh, look at that.
It all comes together.
It does.
Yeah. Oh, and shout out to Leo and Thelonious. Leo wanted to be here tonight, but he's had a long day of work. So, but he will be back soon. And yeah, we gotta get Thelonious back, man. We gotta drag him out of of where.
Yeah, one day we will form like Voltron. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen.
Definitely. And one last shout out to the audience. Thank you to the people. This was a long show, and you guys hung with us throughout. So it was a good show. So but it was a long one. So thank you to the audience.
Yes.
Have a good night, y'all.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Night.